Lost Property, Chapter 5. Okay, so in previous chapters we have found out about Josh's family. So we found out about his immediate family, we found out the band, who's involved in that, his friends. And Chapter 5 now allows us to find out about his extended family on his father's side. So he says every year Dad's family gets together for the Tamlin Christmas party, and this is where we start off Chapter 5. So all his cousins, his uncles, his aunties, grandma, they all get together. We get to the Christmas present giving. He gets a CD, a bone jar, which he already knew that he was getting. An adolescent, it's a little bit probably harder to buy for. Little children, a lot easier. And then this is what he actually makes a point in saying. Without wanting to put a dampener on the fun, that set me wondering whether there was any Christmas present that I couldn't buy for myself with what I was earning at the Lost Property office. So he didn't have to actually wait for Christmas. He didn't have to wait for his birthday. He could actually go out and buy whatever he wants. And if it's something that he couldn't get for himself, he says, I can always get a hold of them, or Mum and Dad will buy them for me, like my Fender, his guitar. And if you're following in the book, I'm up to about page 48 of the book. That was pretty much Gemma's point from the other night, and it made me squirm. So this is what, Gemma's saying about the poverty, about the fact that, they're not living what they're singing about. Then there was a lot of squealing, a lot of noise. He turns around and the children are receiving their gifts. And they were costumes, so they're all excited about it. While he was looking at the cousins with their gifts, he was reminiscing. He said, that was me once. It wasn't a Harry Potter outfit though, but a Roman soldier's kit. So he's reminiscing about his childhood. And then he also notices, as the cousins are opening their presents, faces are filled with absolute excitement. The same type of excitement that he had when he was given that soldier's outfit when he was a child. And also, he remembered that woman. It was the same type of joy I'd seen on that woman when Clive found her brooch. So all of these examples of ecstatic happiness. Then he goes on to say, was it envy? Did I just want to feel happy like these little kids with their cheap Christmas presents? So my note here basically says, Josh is not a happy person. So if you're actually answering questions about the fact of Josh not being happy, you can use the examples at the end of chapter 1, so the quotes from there, but you can also use this as a quote as well, because this answers that question. And it also answers the question of, we talk about materialism, materialistic things, and sentimental value. To be ecstatically happy with something does not necessarily, it has to be expensive. He actually makes a point here when he says the kids with their cheap Christmas presents. So they're not expensive things, and yet they are absolutely overjoyed. They're brimming with joy and with happiness. So it's not, for him, he's suddenly realizing it's not the monetary value of things. It's just the fact that, they've got something they perhaps wanted. They go on later to play at Steve's place. So the band gets together. Gemma's there. The rest of the guys in the band are there, and they're having their little banter. Yeah, they do start playing a bit. Gemma went and spoke to Nevin for a little while. It gets hot after a certain time in the garage. They open the door and they all go outside for a little bit. Now Gemma notices something when she looks outside up in the night sky. The stars. There's the Southern Cross, she said, pointing. She had it right too. So if you remember, I'll put the note up, unlike Alicia, Gemma knew her stars. So if you go back to that night with Alicia, she couldn't pick it out. And even though Josh showed her exactly where, just look here, she still couldn't see it. But Gemma picks it out straight away. What about Orion, I asked. She found that without any trouble, so I asked her for a harder one. Can you find the centaur? So Gemma is actually on the same level as Josh. She's interested in astronomy, in the stars, in science. She's on the same sort of wavelength as Josh. He then goes on to ask her, do you know how far away those stars are? I asked her. And Gemma replies, they measure in light years, don't they? So she has knowledge, same type of knowledge that Josh has. And then he says something that he's already said once before. It's all a monumental waste, I said, aware that I'd started to say these things to Alicia. And if we go back to that conversation with Alicia, as soon as he said it's a monumental waste, her immediate response was, what is? What's a monumental waste? She didn't understand. She sort of wasn't interested in engaging in that type of a conversation. It was going more onto a sort of a philosophical aspect of conversation, and she wasn't going to engage. Her thing was, I know why the stars are out there. They're just for lovers to look at. End of story. She basically shut Josh down. So there's nothing that he could say to keep this conversation going about the stars or anything as such, because she cut him off completely. Now, here he said exactly the same thing to Gemma. So how does Gemma respond? It's all a monumental waste, and Gemma responds, that's a weird thing to say, Josh. How can it be a waste? The stars are just there, part of the universe. Now, the comment that I wrote, Gemma responds to Josh's comments and is able to hold a conversation on his level. The conversation then continues. But why is it so big? I mean, we haven't even worked out how big the universe is yet. It's mind-boggling just trying to imagine, and most of it's so far away we'll never reach it. Does that matter? We've got our own little part of it. That's all we need. Exactly. That's all we need. So why go to all the fuss of making the rest? Gemma laughed, more of a sniff really. Don't ask me. You need a higher authority to answer that one. She flicked her eyes upward, eyebrows too, but left the word God unsaid. So they're having this discussion between them about the stars and the universe and why it's created and why have it all. And Gemma eventually says, well, ask God, basically. And Josh responds immediately. Another waste of time, I muttered. Now, Gemma heard that, turns around to him and says, and basically asks him, or makes a statement, sounds like you don't believe there is such a thing. That kind of is going to shock Josh a little bit, in the sense that he makes a statement and Gemma responds to it, understanding exactly what he's meaning to say. So by him saying another waste of time, Gemma immediately understood that, well, he doesn't believe in religion. He doesn't believe in God. And he's shocked because he said, had I sounded like that? Words are dangerous. They can give you away if you're not careful. Basically, words can give you away only when somebody who is listening to those words understands what you're trying to say. Any of those words that he had said to Alicia wouldn't have resonated with her. She wouldn't have picked up on what he's meaning. She just wouldn't get it. Whereas Gemma, on the other hand, she's intuitive and she can understand. And the comment I've said here, Gemma capable of understanding people based on what they say. He thought, well, I could be quiet or I could just move on. But he decides and he says, but I was tired of that, and for once the truth escaped. No, I don't. So her question of, sounds like you don't believe that, he replies, no, I don't. Gemma's eyebrow twitched, and I wondered whether it was my words that had surprised her or my unguarded honesty. And my comment that I wrote here, unusual for Josh to be so honest. Somehow with Gemma, he can say what he feels. And we'll actually find that as we go through the book, that there is a real big difference between the way that he speaks with Gemma and the way he speaks with Alicia. So with Gemma, he could maintain this conversation, and even to the point of admitting that, no, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in this religion. And be absolutely honest. This idea of my unguarded honesty, because do remember previously when they played the music and Gemma picked him up on the words that he was singing in the band and how she said, they're not you really. And he admitted to this, just pretending. He's pretending to sing about those things and have those feelings. In this situation here, when they're discussing the stars and they're discussing God, he's actually being honest, and she can see it. So Gemma is capable of reading body language, can listen to the tone of the voice, listens to the words that are said, puts that all together, and has an absolute understanding of the communication that Josh is putting out. It really understands what he is actually trying to say. And that is the end of chapter 5.